The sound of polished shoes echoed through the marble hallway as Adrian Cole stepped back into the mansion he once called home. It had been years since the billionaire last stayed here. Years since he had walked these same floors as a boy who had nothing but dreams and a quiet determination to rise above his past. Now, he owned everything in sight: cars, companies, power. But what he didn't expect was to come face to face with something he thought he had left behind forever. It started with a simple moment. A faint scraping sound broke the silence of the morning. Adrian paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as he followed the noise down the long corridor. The mansion staff usually kept everything spotless before he arrived. Nothing was ever out of place. So why now? As he turned the corner, he saw her, kneeling on the cold marble floor, her hands moving slowly as she scrubbed away at a stain that didn't even seem visible. Her clothes were simple, worn at the edges. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling over her tired face. But it wasn't her appearance that made Adrian stop in his tracks. It was recognition. His breath caught, because he knew her. Lena? The name slipped out before he could stop himself. The woman froze. Her hands stopped moving, and for a moment it felt like time itself had paused. Slowly she looked up. Their eyes met, and in that instant the years between them seemed to collapse. She was the same girl who used to laugh in the backyard, the same girl who shared quiet afternoons with him when no one else noticed them, the same childhood Maid who had once been his only friend in a house full of strangers. But now everything was different. Her eyes held something heavy, something broken, and then Adrian noticed what he hadn't seen before. She was pregnant. The realization hit him harder than anything else. His mind raced with questions he didn't know how to ask. What was she doing here? Why hadn't anyone told him? And more importantly, what had happened to her life while he was busy building his empire? Lena quickly looked down again, as if trying to disappear back into the floor. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice almost unrecognizable. "I didn't know you were coming today. I'll finish quickly." "Sir." The word stung more than he expected. Adrian stood there, frozen between the past and the present. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was something deeper, something unresolved. The billionaire who had everything suddenly felt like he understood nothing, because the girl who once meant so much to him was now standing in front of him, struggling, alone, and carrying a life he knew nothing about. And as Adrian took a step closer, ready to ask the questions that were building inside him, he noticed something else. Something that made his expression change completely. Something that made this moment far more complicated than it seemed. Because Lena wasn't just hiding her pain. She was hiding the truth. And whatever that truth was, it was about to change everything. Adrian's gaze didn't move away from her, but his thoughts were already racing back through time, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Lena had always been quiet, but never distant. Back then, she had a warmth about her, a kind of strength that didn't need to be loud. She used to work in the kitchen with her mother, moving through the house like she didn't belong, yet somehow understanding every corner of it better than anyone else. And somehow she had understood him too. When Adrian was younger, before the money, before the power, before the world started calling him a billionaire success story, he had been just a lonely boy in a big house. His parents were always busy, always hosting people who spoke in business terms he didn't understand. The only real conversations he had were with Lena. She never treated him like the owner's son. She just treated him like Adrian. He remembered the afternoons they spent sitting near the back garden wall, sharing stories about the lives they imagined for themselves. He had talked about leaving, about building something of his own one day. She had listened, smiling softly, but never saying much about her own dreams. And then one day, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Adrian had asked about her more than once, but the answers were always vague. Her family left, someone had said. It was better that way. Another voice had added. At some point, life moved on. He left for university, built his empire, became the man everyone now knew. But somewhere deep inside, that unfinished chapter had never really closed. And now she was here again, not as a girl he remembered, but as someone life had clearly tested. "Lena," he said again, softer this time, stepping closer. What are you doing here? She hesitated before answering, her hands gripping the cloth a little tighter. I work here now, she replied, her voice careful, almost guarded. Work here? The words didn't sit right with him. This house. Adrian looked around as if seeing it differently for the first time. Since when? A few months, she said, still not meeting his eyes. A few months. That meant she had been here, under his roof, while he was away closing deals, attending meetings, living a life that felt so far removed from this moment. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked, more to himself than to her. Lena didn't answer that. Instead, she shifted slightly, as if trying to end the conversation without actually saying it. But Adrian wasn't ready to let it go. Not this time. His eyes drifted again, almost instinctively, to her stomach. The reality of it still hadn't settled in his mind. It wasn't just the fact that she was pregnant. It was everything that came with it. The unanswered questions, the silence, the way she carried herself like she was holding more than just a child. Are you okay? He asked quietly. For a brief second, something in her expression changed. A flicker of emotion she couldn't hide fast enough. But then it was gone, replaced by that same careful distance. I'm fine, she said, but she didn't sound fine. And Adrian knew it. There was a story here, a truth that hadn't been told. And for some reason, it felt connected to him, to this house, maybe even to the past they shared. As he stood there, trying to figure out what to say next, a voice suddenly echoed from the end of the hallway. Sir, you're back earlier than expected. Adrian turned slightly, his attention shifting for just a moment. But when he looked back at Lena, she had already lowered her head again, as if the conversation had never happened, as if whatever she was hiding needed to stay hidden. And that only made Adrian more certain of one thing. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was something much bigger. Adrian straightened slightly as Mr. Hargrove, the estate manager, approached with his usual calm and controlled expression. Nothing about the man ever seemed out of place. Not even now. Everything is prepared for your stay, sir, he said, glancing briefly toward Lena before looking back at Adrian. If you need anything, I'll let you know. Adrian cut in, his voice polite but distant. His attention was no longer on the house, or the schedule, or the business waiting for him. It was still fixed on the woman kneeling on the floor, pretending like none of this mattered. Mr. Hargrove gave a slight nod and walked away, his footsteps fading into the background. But something about that brief exchange didn't sit right with Adrian. It wasn't just what was said, it was what wasn't. The way Lena had gone completely silent the moment someone else entered. The way she seemed careful, almost too careful. Adrian took a slow breath, then crouched down slightly, so he was closer to her level. You don't have to do this right now, he said quietly. There are other staff. It's my job, she replied quickly, still not looking at him. That's not what I meant. This time, she didn't answer at all. A heavy silence settled between them, filled with things neither of them were saying. Adrian could feel it growing, stretching, pulling him deeper into something he didn't yet understand. He had faced billion-dollar deals without hesitation, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, but this felt different. This felt personal. Lena, he said again, more firmly now, look at me. For a moment, it seemed like she wouldn't, but slowly, she lifted her eyes. And this time, Adrian saw it clearly. The exhaustion, the worry, and something else beneath it, fear. Not of him, but of something. Did someone force you to come back here? He asked, his voice lower now. Her reaction was immediate. No, she said quickly. Too quickly. No one forced me. Then why does it feel like you're trying to say something without actually saying it? She swallowed, her grip tightening again on the cloth in her hands. You're overthinking, sir. There was again, sir. Every time she said it, it felt like a wall being built between them. Adrian exhaled slowly and stood up, running a hand through his hair as he tried to steady his thoughts. Stop calling me that, he said. You never used to. That was a long time ago. The words landed heavier than she probably intended. A long time ago. As if whatever they had shared back then didn't matter anymore. As if the past had been erased, replaced by this distance, this formality, this tension neither of them knew how to break. But Adrian wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. Who's the father? He asked suddenly. The question hung in the air, sharp and direct. Lena froze. For a second, Adrian thought she might actually answer. But then she looked away again, and the silence that followed said more than any words could. I see, Adrian muttered, though the truth was, he didn't see anything clearly at all. His mind started connecting possibilities, none of them simple, none of them easy. If she had been working here for months, if she had come back without telling him, if she was carrying a child and clearly struggling, then why had no one mentioned it? Why had Mr. Hargrove acted like everything was normal? And why did it feel like the entire house was quietly hiding something? Adrian turned toward the large windows at the end of the hallway, his reflection staring back at him against the morning light. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't in control of the situation, and he didn't like that feeling. Behind him, Lena slowly resumed her work, as if trying to disappear into routine again. But now, every small movement seemed louder, heavier, filled with meaning, because this wasn't just about a billionaire returning home. This was about a past that had come back with questions, about a pregnant woman who clearly carried more than just her own burden, and about a truth that no one in this house seemed willing to speak out loud. As Adrian stood there, one thought became impossible to ignore. Whatever Lena was hiding, it wasn't just her secret. It was connected to this place. And the deeper he looked into it, the more he risked uncovering something he might not be ready to face. The rest of the morning passed, but nothing felt normal anymore. Adrian tried to sit through a scheduled call in his study, but his focus kept slipping. Numbers, contracts, voices on the screen, it all felt distant, almost meaningless compared to what was happening just outside that room. Every time he paused, his mind went back to the same image. Lena on the floor, her hand shaking slightly, her voice careful, her eyes hiding something she clearly didn't want him to see. By the time the meeting ended, he had made up his mind. He needed answers. Not later, not through someone else. From her. Adrian stepped out into the hallway again, his pace quicker now. The house felt different than it had just hours ago. It wasn't just a place anymore. It felt like a space filled with quiet secrets, like every corner held something unsaid. Staff members moved around as usual, but there was a subtle shift in their behavior. A glance here, a pause there. It was small, but noticeable, and it only made his suspicion grow. He spotted Lena near the back corridor, carrying a small tray. She moved carefully, like she was trying not to draw attention. But the moment she saw him walking toward her, her steps slowed. "Lena," he called out. She stopped. For a second, it looked like she might walk away anyway, but she didn't. She stood there, waiting, her back slightly tense. Adrian closed the distance between them. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "I'm working," she replied, almost automatically. "Then take a break." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the tray. "I can't just—" "Yes, you can," he interrupted, his tone still calm but more firm now. "This isn't just about work anymore." That made her look at him, really look at him, and for the first time, there was a crack in that careful wall she had built. Adrian lowered his voice. "Come with me." There was hesitation, a long, heavy pause where she seemed to be weighing something in her mind. Then, without saying a word, she slowly nodded. He led her toward a quieter part of the house, a small sitting room that hadn't been used in years. It was away from the main halls, away from listening ears. Or at least, that's what he hoped. As soon as the door closed behind them, the silence felt louder than before. Lena didn't sit. She stayed near the door, like she wasn't planning to stay long. Adrian noticed. "You're not a guest here," he said gently. "You don't have to stand like that." "I'm not a guest," she replied softly. "I'm staff." There was again that distance, that line she refused to cross. Adrian took a breath, trying to stay patient, then stopped talking like we're strangers. Her eyes flickered for a moment, but she didn't respond. The tension in the room kept building, thick and uncomfortable. "Something's wrong," Adrian said finally, "and you know it. I can see it. This isn't just about you working here. It's more than that." Lena looked down, her silence stretching again. "Does this have anything to do with why you left?" he asked. That question hit something. Her shoulders stiffened slightly, and for a brief moment, it looked like she might finally open up, but then she shook her head, almost like she was stopping herself. You shouldn't be asking these questions, she said quietly. Why not? Because it won't change anything. It might, Adrian replied. She looked up at him again, and this time there was something stronger in her eyes. Not just fear, but urgency. No, she said, her voice a little sharper now. It won't. You don't understand how things work here. Adrian frowned. This is my house. Lena gave a faint, almost sad smile. That's what you think. The words landed harder than anything else she had said. Before Adrian could respond, a sudden knock came at the door. Both of them froze. It wasn't a loud knock, but it was enough to break whatever moment they were on the edge of. Lena's expression changed instantly. The tension, the fear, it all rushed back at once. See, she whispered. This is why. Adrian turned toward the door, his jaw tightening. Who is it? He called out. There was a brief pause. Then Mr. Hargrove's voice came through, calm as ever. Sir, there's something you need to see. Adrian glanced back at Lena, whose face had gone pale, and in that moment, he realized something that made his chest tighten. Whatever was behind that door was connected to her, and it was about to pull him deeper into a truth he was only beginning to understand. Adrian didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on Lena, searching her face for something, anything, that would tell him what he was about to walk into. But she didn't speak. She just shook her head slightly, like she already knew this moment couldn't be stopped. The knock came again. Calm, patient, certain. Adrian finally turned and opened the door. Mr. Hargrove stood there, composed as always. Sir, he said, stepping aside slightly, it's better if you come now. Better for who? Adrian asked, his voice colder than before. Hargrove didn't answer directly. Please. That was enough to push Adrian forward. He stepped out into the hallway, then glanced back once more. Lena hadn't moved. She was still standing near the door, her hands pressed together tightly, her expression filled with something that looked dangerously close to panic. Stay here, Adrian told her quietly. But the moment he said it, he realized she wasn't the one being protected. She was the one being watched. The walk down the corridor felt longer than it should have. Adrian noticed things he hadn't before. Small cameras placed discreetly in corners. Staff members lowering their eyes as he passed. The quiet tension hanging in the air like something everyone felt but no one spoke about. This wasn't here before, Adrian said, his gaze flicking toward one of the cameras. Security upgrade, sir, Hargrove replied smoothly. Without telling me? Hargrove didn't respond. That silence said more than words. They stopped outside a set of doors Adrian rarely used. It led to an older section of the mansion, one that had been closed off for years. He frowned. Why are we here? Hargrove reached for the handle. Because you need to understand the full picture. The door opened slowly. Inside, the room looked nothing like the rest of the house. It wasn't elegant or welcoming. It was controlled, organized, cold. A large table sat in the center, covered with files, documents, and a laptop displaying surveillance feeds. Adrian stepped inside, his expression tightening. What is this? Something that was meant to protect your interests, Hargrove said. By spying on my own house? By managing risks before they become problems. Adrian's jaw clenched. Speak clearly. Hargrove walked toward the table and picked up a thin file. He hesitated for just a second before handing it over. Adrian took it. The moment he opened it, something inside him shifted, because the first page had a name on it. Lena. His grip tightened slightly as he flipped through the pages. There were records, dates, notes, details about her arrival, her work schedule, even medical checkups. His eyes stopped on one line, and everything inside him went still. Pregnancy confirmed, duration consistent with timeline of residence. Adrian looked up sharply. What does this supposed to mean? Hargrove met his gaze calmly. It means the situation is more complicated than it appears. No, Adrian said, his voice rising slightly. You've been tracking her, monitoring her. Why? Because she didn't return here by chance. The words hit like a quiet explosion. Adrian's mind immediately went back to Lena's warning. You don't understand how things work here. What are you saying? He demanded. Hargrove took a slow breath. I'm saying her return was arranged. By who? A brief pause. Then Hargrove said something that made Adrian feel like the ground had shifted beneath him. By someone who has a direct interest in you and in that child. Adrian stared at him, disbelief mixing with anger. That doesn't make any sense. It will, Hargrove replied, but not all at once. Adrian's heart was pounding now, every piece of this puzzle refusing to fit together. You're telling me Lena was brought back here on purpose? Into my house? Without my knowledge? Yes. And you just allowed it? We didn't have much of a choice. Adrian let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair as the tension built even higher. Who was behind this? Hargrove didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the laptop slightly. Maybe you should see for yourself. Adrian's eyes moved to the screen. It was a live camera feed from the sitting room, where Lena was supposed to be alone. But she wasn't. There was someone else in the room now. A man Adrian had never seen before, standing close to her, speaking in a low voice. And whatever he was saying, it was making Lena's fear unmistakably real. Adrian's pulse spiked. Who is that? Hargrove's voice remained steady. That, he said, is exactly the problem. And in that moment, Adrian realized something far worse than he had imagined. This wasn't just about Lena coming back into his life. This was about someone using her to reach him. And whatever game had already begun, he was now right in the middle of it. Adrian didn't wait another second. The file slipped from his hand as he turned and rushed out of the room, his steps quick and heavy against the floor. Every thought in his mind narrowed down to one thing. Lena, the image on that screen wouldn't leave him. The fear in her eyes, the way she stood frozen in front of that man, it wasn't something he could ignore. He reached the sitting room and pushed the door open without knocking. The man inside turned immediately, calm but alert. Lena stepped back, her hand instinctively moving to protect her stomach. The tension in the room was sharp, almost suffocating. Step away from her, Adrian said, his voice steady but firm. The man didn't argue. He took a small step back, raising his hand slightly in a non-threatening way. You must be Adrian Cole, he said, his tone controlled. I was hoping we'd meet like this. Who are you? Adrian demanded. The man glanced briefly at Lena before answering. Someone trying to fix a mistake that started years ago. That doesn't answer my question. No, the man said quietly, but it explains why she's here. Adrian moved closer to Lena, placing himself between her and the stranger without even thinking about it. You shouldn't be talking to him, he said to her under his breath. Lena shook her head slightly, her voice trembling. He's not the problem. That made Adrian pause. What? He asked. The man exhaled slowly. She's right. I'm not here to harm her, or you. I'm here because you deserve to know the truth before it's too late. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then start talking. There was a long silence before the man finally spoke again. Years ago, when Lena left this house, it wasn't her choice. Adrian felt his chest tighten. What do you mean? She was sent away. The man continued, quietly, without questions, because someone believed her presence here was inconvenient. Adrian's mind immediately went to one person. My family? The man didn't deny it. Lena's eyes filled with emotion, but she stayed silent. Adrian looked at her, his voice softer now. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, she whispered, but I wasn't allowed to come back, and you were already gone. The weight of that hit harder than anything else. But that's not the only truth, the man added. Adrian looked back at him sharply. What else is there? The man hesitated for just a second, then said it. The child she's carrying isn't a mystery. The room went still. Adrian felt like everything around him had gone quiet. What are you saying? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back anymore. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. I didn't even know if I should. Adrian's heart was pounding now, every second stretching longer than the last. That child, the man said carefully, is connected to you. The words hit like a shockwave. Adrian took a step back, his mind trying to process what he had just heard. Memories rushed back, moments from years ago, conversations, feelings he had buried and never fully understood. "No," he said quietly, shaking his head. "That's not possible." "It is," Lena said, her voice breaking. "I didn't plan this. I didn't even know until recently. And when I did, it was already too late to keep running." The room filled with silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavy, real. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since walking into this house, everything started to make sense in a way he hadn't expected. All the secrecy, the surveillance, the fear. It wasn't just about control. It was about protecting something, or someone. Adrian took a slow breath, then stepped forward again, his voice steadier now. "You should have told me." "I was scared," she admitted. "You're not alone anymore." The words came out naturally, without hesitation. For a moment, everything seemed to settle. The tension, the questions, the uncertainty, they didn't disappear, but they shifted into something else, something that felt like a beginning instead of an ending. The man nodded slightly, as if his role in all of this was finally complete. "Now you know," he said. "What you do next, that's up to you." Adrian didn't look at him. His attention was still on Lena. But just as it felt like the truth had finally come out, the man added one more thing. "There's just one more detail you should be aware of." Adrian's expression tightened slightly. "What?" The man's voice remained calm. "You're not the only one who knows now." Those words brought the tension rushing back instantly. Adrian turned toward him slowly. "What does that mean?" The man glanced toward the hallway, then back at Adrian. "It means the people who arranged all of this, they're not done yet." A quiet chill moved through the room. Because even though the truth had finally been revealed, it wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't filled with confusion. It was filled with decision. Adrian didn't rush to speak. He looked at Lena, at the fear that still lingered in her eyes, and then at the door, as if he could already feel the pressure building outside those walls. For years, he had built his life around control, around making sure nothing caught him off guard. But this wasn't something he could manage from a distance. This was personal. "Who are they?" Adrian finally asked, his voice calm but focused. The man gave a small nod, as if he'd been waiting for that question. "People who have been handling your family's affairs for a long time. Quietly. They believe they're protecting your name, your reputation, your future." Adrian let out a slow breath. By deciding what stays and what disappears. The man didn't argue. That was all Adrian needed to hear. He turned fully toward Lena. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not because they say so. Not because of fear. You stay because you choose to. And if you stay, it will be as someone who belongs here, not as someone hiding in the background." Lena looked at him, uncertain at first. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "They won't just step back." "Then they'll have to face me," Adrian replied. There was no anger in his tone now, just certainty. For the first time, Lena's expression shifted. The fear didn't disappear completely, but something else replaced it. Relief, even if it was small. The man watched him for a moment, then spoke again. "They won't make this easy, but they also won't act recklessly. Not anymore. Too much has already been exposed." Adrian nodded slightly. "Then it ends here." He walked toward the door and opened it, his posture steady, his presence different now. Not just a billionaire returning home, but someone who finally understood what mattered. Outside, the hallway felt the same, but Adrian didn't see it that way anymore. He called for Mr. Hargrove, and within moments the man appeared, just as composed as always. But this time, Adrian didn't wait. "No more decisions without me," he said directly. "No more arrangements, no more control behind closed doors. This house, my life, and the people in it, that's my responsibility." Hargrove held his gaze, then gave a slow nod. "Understood, sir." And just like that, the quiet system that had been running in the background began to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. Hours later, the house felt different. The tension had eased, replaced by something unfamiliar, honesty. Staff moved more freely. Conversations felt less guarded. And for the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel like a place filled with secrets. Adrian stood near the large windows again, but this time Lena was beside him. Neither of them spoke for a while. "We can figure this out," Adrian said eventually. "Everything, one step at a time." Lena nodded, her hand resting gently over her stomach. "I don't need everything to be perfect," she said. "I just don't want to run anymore." "You won't have to." The words were simple, but they carried weight. As the sun began to set, casting a soft golden light across the room, Adrian realized something he hadn't understood before. Success, power, being a billionaire, it had given him control over many things, but not over what truly mattered. That required something else: responsibility, courage, and the willingness to face the past instead of burying it. He glanced at Lena, then back at the fading light. What started as a shocking moment, a billionaire finding his pregnant childhood maid scrubbing his floors, had turned into something far deeper. A story about truth, choices, and second chances. And while the future was still uncertain, for the first time, it felt like it belonged to them.